Well, good evening. You are listening to Dr. Margaret and Dr. Katie Speaks on Soma Fusion Media this evening. I want to apologize for everybody that was listening last week. I know Margaret, I appreciate Margaret for doing a show on behalf of me by herself. I had a couple of emergencies to attend to, specifically me as a medical emergency, but I'm feeling much better now. It's taken me a week to recover, but I'm doing well. Thank you. I want to just firstly thank you for those who did reach out to me to make sure that of my well-being, to make sure that I was doing okay. But firstly, tonight we are going to be talking about how to learn to identify the early signs of mental health issues, and that can potentially decrease in severity, but we're talking about mental health issues that encompass a wide range of conditions. And we're talking from childhood right up into adulthood, mood disorders, thinking in patterns and behavior. Mental illness can include depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, eating disorders, addictive behaviors, and all sorts of things that can be mentioned on this show this evening. Again, we're all about education and awareness. And so we would like you guys to join us on this conversation. You can call us on 929-436-2866, 522-657-2748. Now, the number will be listed up in the description of the post. So if you're watching the live feed on YouTube or Facebook Live, you will see it up there. I will mention it again during the show so that you know where to call if you do want to call in. Otherwise, leave us a comment or leave us a question in the comments on the live feed itself. Now, I do want to mention too that this is a topic that is very, very close to my heart. I have, being a survivor of domestic violence, child abuse, sex abuse, and should I say domestic violence, but all 5 categories. So there is a lot to say in terms of mental illness. I myself have a child that deals with mental illness, and I also, me myself, have experienced and still going through mental illness myself. I have CPTSD, and so one of the biggest reasons why I did become a therapist / psychologist and all the things that I do and write about, if those who watch me closely, is to advocate for people who are less unfortunate and who are dealing with the trials and tribulations of life. For those who know me very well, I stand up and hold a heart for those who have known rejection, bullying, depression, anxiety, fear, trauma, mocking, belittlement, harassment, loneliness, abandonment, and exploitation and abuse of all kinds. And I will be standing, and I'll just make a declaration this evening that I stand on the side of the afflicted, the misunderstood, the marginalized, and the outcast. And I hold space for the one in the midst of the struggle, always and every time. And with that said, I'm going to hand it over to Margaret, and she's going to lead us in with her thoughts and views on mental illness and what she thinks of it.
Well, first of all, let me say that being an older person, that I too went through all of that, emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually. It led to a breakdown and death. And when I came back, here I am, and I wrote my book, My Journey into Oneness, The Way to Oneness Revisited, which was originally called The Way to Oneness. I had to learn all that. And I want to say categorically here that in those days, for women, well, not just women, men as well, because they were coming back from the war and everything else, the post-traumatic stress disorder wasn't recognized. And as I've said in other shows, the stiff upper lip. But, you know, there were a lot of things because, you know, being a medium, I was listening to spirit guides. They got me through all that. In fact, Sister Teresa used to just talk and talk and talk to me and calm me down because the tears were running. I was like this all the time, day in, day out, every day. And I even sat with a bottle of pills for me and my kids. I was ready to go, you know. When you're alone and depressed and miserable, you just don't have anyone to go to, especially in those days. There was no home care, there was no government supports, there was nothing. And so all you had was hopefully your family, but then you go to your family and they're all screwed as well. So it's like, well, you just have to put up with it. I remember my mother just saying to me straight away, well, darling, this is life. You have to sacrifice yourself for your children. And I sacrificed myself for my children. And, you know, the bottom line was, though, I learned and learned and learned. And so I was a pioneer, talking in public about all this stuff at a time when people were looking at me like, where did you get all this information? Of course, I'm saying, downloaded, because there wasn't anything. Ericksonian and those kinds of things were about, but people didn't really take it seriously. And now when I look at where we're at today with reprogramming and re-talking about the brain and the studies, and like, for example, how somebody realized and recognized that the brain moves energy faster than the speed of light. If I'd have said that to someone when I was 20, they'd have looked at me like I was insane. So guys, what I wanted to talk about for me, and I'm sure Katie will pick up on this, is the early womb period. You're inside your mother, and your mother is going through all sorts of terrible things, and you're a part of her, so you're getting those terrible things. And when you pop out, you're already encoded with the soul structure coding, the DNA and her RNA in you. And so you might have started out with a very negative beginning. You've got something to say on that?
Yeah, and they've always said, you know, the upbringing that, or the environment that we are in, always has an effect on our lives, even from early childhood right up into adulthood. Some of the things that we don't recognize in adulthood, we kind of disregard that because we don't. I mean, it's like explaining to somebody about, you know, half of the issues that we have in adulthood is, you know, came from childhood, but no, there's a lot of adults out there that go, no, I didn't have that happen. No,
but they don't remember. You've got to realize a lot of stuff is shoved at the back of your brain, so you don't want to think about it.
Exactly. And so, you know, a lot of people are very, very skeptical about, you know, when we have problems of adulthood and we relate it back to childhood, and they go, oh no, it's not there, you know. But the problem is that our upbringing very much influences our physiological and psychological thoughts and feelings and perspectives that we have in life. And sometimes it takes a lot of healing and a lot of know-how in order to combat what we need to do to grow and to get out of that stuck mode that we put ourselves in, which can lead to mental illnesses such as.
And I'm going to inject here. A lot of people have no idea how to go inward. They're always looking outward. So they're looking at people for role models, a copycat and all that kind of thing. I was fortunate in that I had the spirit guides who were making me go inward. And right now, and I want to say this up front right now because I've been working on it, is I am now meditating on being in my mother's womb. And my mother is a cripple, remember? Too much stories here to tell, but in a nutshell, she's a cripple, and war, bombs are falling every night. And even today, I will hear some noise that I'm not expecting. Like Caroline came in and stood behind me, and I was telling you yesterday, and I was jumping out my skin because I was so scared. So I've been working on all of that in the womb. So I want people to realize it's not your fault that you've got some hocus pocus coming out of you right now, because the planets are pushing our buttons. And so we're starting to realize that whatever we were conditioned to be may not be acceptable to us anymore, or it may be good or it may be bad. There's no judgment here. You might have learned in a very secure, safe environment to be very secure and safe, and then suddenly you're being exposed to all this negativity that's going on in the world. loss of death, loved ones and whatever, and suddenly you're crumbling, and this other you is coming out that seems to be incapable of managing. Now, there are kiddies too that are going through this. It's right across the board. So I just wanted to put that up right away. And that's partly why I wanted to do the show on this topic. Yeah.
Absolutely. And of course, you know, it is a long, hard road to recover. I know for a fact, me personally, it's taken, I mean, I'm just going to say it outright, that I am a 35-year-old woman. I've been through a lot, and 29 years of my life has been in survival mode, literally fight mode, trying to get through the traumas of life. And I'm not going to go into detail about my traumas, but I can use it as an example as for someone who, you know, they say that power is knowledge, but power is also, there is also knowledge. How is that? Knowledge is in power as well. Did I say that right?
Empowerment is there if we understand the knowledge and we turn it into wisdom. But if we don't, it becomes garbage in our brain that we play like juggling balls backwards and forwards, rationalizing to ourselves, I know what I'm doing, but I don't know what I'm doing, but I'll pretend I know what I'm doing. Yeah. And of course we end up being worried, insecure, unstable, lost, lonely, angry, isolated. Don't talk to me, I don't want to be with you. You know, there's all these different moods that come up, and we're rationalizing it's because of you. You've caused this in me. But we haven't realized we already had it in us. We're working with it. Exactly. And yeah, go on.
The only reason why I say this is because out of my 29 years of life, I've kind of gotten to a point where, you know what, I'm like, it's all about education and awareness for me. Yes, I'm still healing from my life's traumas, but at the same time, I wouldn't be the psychologist I am today. I wouldn't be that if I didn't put my foot down and say, hey, enough's enough. I'm going to educate myself so vastly now, because, you know, obviously I've done, for people who do listen to my show on Soma Fusion Radio, you would have noticed that I do raise a lot of awareness and red flags for people who are going through relationship traumas, going through traumas that are really, really severe in nature. And so I advocate. And so I use the power of my pain to advocate, not in an unhealthy way, but in a healthy way, so that people kind of wake up to realize that, you know, what you are going through is not only toxic to yourself, but toxic to other people. But a lot of people who are either toxic themselves don't even realize it until somebody says, hey, slap you around a little bit, and you know, metaphorically, and say, hey, wake up, this is what's going on. You really need to do the work, the inner work, and actually reflect and understand why you're going through and feel your way through it. A lot of people will go logical about it, and they really need to feel with your heart. And
well, let me chip in there that the emotion is the glue that sticks the memories into your cells in your body. I was just working with someone recently whose body was like, all like this, and she walked like this, and she moved like this. And after I'd done the crystal acupuncture and of course 4 hours of counseling and so on, she opened up and she could stand upright. And within 24 hours, she came back for the psychological session and another 4 hours, and she's a different person. And I'm saying this right up front because I want people to realize you don't have to do all the hard work like I did. I had nowhere to go, so I had to listen to spirit guides. I studied psychology, psychiatry, anatomy, physiology, theology, religion. It went on. And so yes, I've got an all-round awareness, but not everybody has the time or the need or the desire to do that. So what I'm saying here is that surrender is the key. In other words, put all your mindset out the window, throw it away, and work on your body. And look, like if I got a neck ache, you know, which I had recently, and I couldn't go any further than that. Now I worked on it. okay? Still a bit tied up here, but I at least can go all the way. What was that? It was a memory of being left behind. I was meditating on it, and all these people were getting in the bus, and we were all going off somewhere, and they shut the door on me, and I still haven't got on the bus. But someone saw me, in fact, thank you, opened the door to let me in. But for one moment, I was not seen, I was not known, I was not understood. And that was I was only about 8 or 9 when I discovered this memory. Even today, I still stand back because I'm expecting to be left behind. I dump that and suddenly, hey, I'm here. It's a whole different thing. So, people listening, I want you to understand you don't have to be stuck here. You must work on your heart. That's very important. And you were about to say something about what you were doing emotionally, weren't you?
I was?
Well, I thought you was. I'm a medium. I can't help it.
Like I said, I've been through a hell of a lot. And from my experience, I wish what I've been through on nobody. But it's helped me actually get where I am today. And it wouldn't have made me the person I am today. But with the know-how, the thing is that a lot of us don't have that awareness to become, or conscious awareness to become become unstuck. We sit there and we wallow, and it's like I used to be able to ride a bike, but I had an accident, and now I don't want to ride a bike anymore because I'm fearful that I'm gonna hurt myself again. And so you spend a lifetime trying to figure out, how am I going to get back on that bike? And so therefore you feel a little depressed about it because you regret, you have a resentment for it, and then you see all your friends do it, and they're riding bikes and you're not, and you're still sitting there fearful of the bike.
Yeah, I know. And that actually was something drilled into me, because in England, I couldn't ride a bike on a London road because my mum thought I'd get killed. And one day a friend of mine, actually friend of my sister's, loaned me a bike, and I rode that thing all over the place for 4 or 5 miles. First time I've ever been on it. And all the way through, I was hearing my spirit guide say, you can do this, you can do this. I went to a park and I went up and down. There was deers around, it was nature, there was lots of trees, 5 miles all the way around the park, 2 miles up the hill to get there, 2 miles down. So you can do the math for a first time on a bike. And I couldn't have done that if I hadn't have heard the spirit guides telling me you could do this. And the reason I want to say this is because I've had patients over the years who sit down and they say, I've listened to meditations, repeat it 21 times, which does work, by the way, for some people. But for the majority of people, after about 10 times, you start spacing out, and you're not listening to whoever's voice it is. You're asleep, you don't know, and you wake up, and for a day you maybe feel better, and then this habit comes back and this idea comes back, and once again you're in your own way, and it's a roller coaster for us. And over time, other events happen that can be associated. For example, let's say I was riding a blue bike. Actually, I don't remember what color it was, but I'm saying that. And I eventually, shall we say, 2 months later, got myself a blue dress and didn't think about it. But blue is the association color of, I was enjoying myself on the bike, so I'm going to enjoy myself in a blue dress. So off I go in my nice blue dress, and let's say I go to school, and my friend says, "Why, you got a horrible blue dress on." Suddenly I'm not so good. These kinds of things happen to us as children all the time, and we're processing, trying to understand over and over again what we like, what we don't like, what will be, what won't be, and so on. And so we are confused here and emotionally torn apart between what's good and what's bad.
Exactly. And we tend to take the negative on everything. We don't, there's a lot of people out there that won't see the positive because they're just not, they don't have the mindset to do that, because We live in a destructive world, just point blank. We live in a destructive world, and we don't want to hear the cold, hard truth. You know, the truth can be really, really brutal sometimes, and we just don't want to hear it. We want to see puppy dogs, pussycats, and rainbows. Like, really, like.
Right. But, you know, I want to tell a story here about rainbows. You know, they say you cannot stand at the end of a rainbow. I and my friends were out playing ball on the walls, you know, I used to 3 balls and stuff. And the rain came down, dripping. And all of a sudden, we're all in a rainbow. And we're screaming up at our parents to look down because we can actually see the rainbow coming down, like I can't do it on the down like this, and we're in the rainbow. So anybody who tells me you cannot stand at the end of the rainbow, they're lying to you, because you can, because there were 6, 7 kids old enough to remember, and my young sister and her friends. So it was about 10 of us all together, and we were running in and out, and you could see all the speckles on our arms as well, because we're in that rainbow. Prismatic energy. And the reason I'm mentioning this is that's what our brain's doing. Every time we think, we are sending out all these little prismatic energies in our aura, and everybody around us is feeling us, and it's like static electricity. And then they don't like us. They don't want to talk to us. They don't want to be with us because we're making them feel uncomfortable. I've got lots of little things like that where I can make it, hopefully, for people to understand that we react to energy all the time, and we rationalize emotionally, mentally, physically, and spiritually as to what we think it is. And then we impose that idea on everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone else sits there going, huh? You're an idiot. You're stupid. What happens to our self-esteem, our self-worth, our self-value? It's on the floor. I spent a lot of time on the floor when I was a kid.
And then, of course, we have the other influences of or environmental influences like religion and politics and all of that. And we're just one big hot mess. We really are. We're just one big hot mess.
Now, you mentioned religion. I mean, when you think, you know, I was lucky. My parents allowed me to do whatever I wanted, but I was brought up Church of England. But I went at 10 to 12 years old, that period. I was kind of like Jesus, presiding in my head. I used to say, well, I want to go here and ask questions and do this and that. And everywhere I went, I saw the same thing. It didn't matter what the religion was. It was ours is the best. And we still have that today. You know, it's like, why do we always have to have the best? Why do we always have to be the one who is going to tell the rest of the world that we are the best? Why can't we just be the same?
It goes the same with the same analogy about jealous people who are envious and jealous. Like, why cannot, instead of being envious and jealous, why can't you get off your ass, so to speak, and go ahead and do whatever it is that you're jealous of or envious of? There's nothing stopping from anybody from doing anything in life. There is nothing. The world is full of possibilities, and we're still driven by influence.
Well, when you think back to anyone who's been a leader in our world, and you could pick anyone, it doesn't matter, religion, philosophy, art, you know, Nostradamus, anybody, to the majority of people, they are different. They're leaders, they're something. It's the same in politics. It doesn't matter where you're going. There's always someone who is different. And people resent that. They don't want you to be different, because if you're different, you're showing them up. And so they will pull you down. They will try and destroy you in some way by critiquing or smarming something, or, you know, even loud mouthing on TV right now. I mean, you just hear it all the time. It's like, I don't even want to put the TV on unless it's a movie. But really, I mean, hasn't anybody got something good to say about someone?
No, a lot of people don't. They're so interested in being judgmental or critical about anything and everything that we do. What color is my hair today? it's purple. Well, I don't like that color because it's not. But what has it got to do with you?
Exactly. And but you see, people are, another thing about particularly over the last 20 years, I've noticed it, is I want to stand out in the crowd. So when you say purple hair, it doesn't matter what it is. I could be wearing the latest bebop clothes or something, and I could see older generations looking at people and going, what the hell are you wearing that for and looking like that for? You're supposed to dress up like we used to go to church or fly on a plane.
Back when I was living in Australia, Australia is a multicultural country, but I've actually, and being that all four of my children are of mixed descent, they are what you could call them a mix being half.
They're beautiful children, that's all.
They're mixed children. And so I had this woman who wasn't a senior, and she just obviously had been brought up in that times of segregation. And she actually said to me, she goes, "Did you adopt your children?" And I'm looking at her going, "No, I didn't adopt my children. They're my children. I gave birth to them." No, you didn't. You adopted them from Africa, didn't you? And she kept going on this conversation, kept repeating herself over.
Really?
And she goes, no, you adopted them, being that I'm white. And she said, I don't ever take any personal offense to that, because eventually the conversation falls into me putting them in their place very subtly and politely. But this woman persisted just one day. And of course, we were standing in front of we're in a shopping mall, we're standing in front of an elevator to get to the next level. And we walked into the elevator and she kept persisting. She goes, no, your children are adopted from Africa. And I went, listen, my children are not adopted from Africa. They came out of my damn vagina. I literally had to go so blunt, and I did it in front of everybody. The looks on everybody's face was like, oh my God, what the hell did she just say? Like, if that woman did not persist, it wouldn't triggered me into giving a reaction in the first place. People cannot accept the words that are given first out from personal experience, because they find it unfathomable to accept what has been said.
It is, and thank goodness that would be my dad's generation. Because they all had class and structure, and I was born into that. But the bottom line was that I remember sort of vaguely going through the anatomy of psychology classes, when I was 19 through 21 or so, that they were saying that the genes would not mix. That if you mixed someone, say, is Asian with someone who's Western or whatever it was, that they would be born dysfunctional in some way. And there was a lot of ignorance because it didn't know. Science has come a long way, and we've got to praise science on that side. And all those people who grew up and were born and wanted to prove those people wrong, and show us that, yes, we do mix very well together. And now, I was just saying, I watched, before we came on, I was watching Ancient Aliens last night, and they're actually saying something that I was saying when I was a kid, that humans were around with the dinosaurs and they could ride on some of them. And I was 10 or 12, and I remember saying that because Spirit was telling me. And now they're saying that. So, I'm looking 60 years later, so our world is changing, but unfortunately it's changing in destruction. And if it takes destruction of the old ways to get rid of what was, then I'm all for it. But the thing that I'm having a job with people right now is they don't understand the need for destruction. Like a fire, for example, if we don't have a fire that burns off all the vegetation, we're not going to have some better growth later that's hardier and stronger. And in the same way, if we don't change, we're not going to be prepared for a future.
Exactly.
So what are we going to be like? Another thing is, I used to talk about, I remember when I was on Syria as a planet, you know, it's not the planet anymore, it's gaseous mess. But we were 35 feet tall. And people look at me, 35 feet tall. But hey, why would we be here with the dinosaurs? 35 feet tall is nothing. It's only something when you compare it. So if I'm standing next to a 35-foot tall person, I'm going to be minuscule, which is no different from when we're a baby and we're toddling around and you're looking at 6-foot dad. And people don't realize we have those memories. And yet we're still trying to say, I'm this tiny person when I'm an adult walking around with all these other tall people, but I don't feel tall. I feel very small. I feel restricted. I feel limited because they're still carrying that baby mind.
Well, you're still in that mindset is that I can't rewrite history, because you're still stuck in the history, because you still are being preached it. You're still unconsciously not knowing where you're going, because you've suffered from whatever you've had going on in your life. Then on top of that, you're like, well, I don't know where to start. So I'm just going to follow somebody and just pretend that everything's okay and live on with my miserable life.
I found for me, because, you know, listening to spirit guides anyway, that when I was going back in my life and my history to dump all the negative, you know, when I came back after I died, that there were things, for example, that I would never consciously have known that I knew. For example, I remember going to Sunday school and they had these old cane round seats that used to have in churches. And I know the war has ended, so I was about three and a bit. I came up with this memory of trying to climb up on that chair. Now, as an adult, you don't think, you just get it, sit down on it, and do your business, whatever you're doing, talking, teaching, whatever, and leave. The effort that I was holding onto the back and trying to pull myself up onto the seat, twiddle my body around so I could sit on it, you know, climbing 2-3-year-old child trying to climb on a chair. We take that hardship, that idea psychologically, and put it into every muscle in our body. And so subliminally, if you see that same chair, and that's what stimulated me at the time to wonder why I was not comfortable in this chair, was to sit on it as an adult and feel disoriented. And I'm like, I'm not fitting on this chair. I don't feel right. And so I went home that night, meditated, and recovered this memory of me trying to get on that chair. I'm saying that because I want people to realize our cellular neuromuscular memory emotionally is stored in this brain box. And every time you see something you saw as a small child, subliminally you're running those psychological, emotional thoughts that you had as that child. And that's why a lot of people, even though they're adults, are still acting like they're babies.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what it is? It's a state of hypnosis. So when we are driving the car, remember we talked about some another show, and you're driving down the road and you think about the washing and whether you made sandwiches for the kid or not, whatever. You're not seeing the road, but if the car in front of you brakes, suddenly you're back. You know exactly what you're doing. You're master of your car. You're on automatic while you're doing something. Well, where our whole life consciously is automatic. And we think we're thinking, but we're actually not. We're running programs.
Yeah, we are. We definitely are. And not only that, I mean, for me, I open myself up to thinking about thinking. That is one of my specialties. I absolutely love it. But no, thinking about thinking opens you up to a world of wonder that you could never seen possible, because it actually not only gives you the introspection that is needed to open your mind up to whatever possibility that it is, that it helps you to overcome whatever it is that you need to overcome, so that you can dispel the actions and the consequences that result as a part of growth.
And people, you know, they're afraid to make changes, because if they make a change, someone else around them is going to say, why are you changing? I don't want you to change. I'm going to emotionally blackmail you in some way, shape, or form to stop you changing, because if you change, that means I have to change. And if I have to change, we may never be friends again. And I can't handle that. So I want everything to stay the same.
No, which brings up a good point, the rejection syndrome.
Yeah, my book. Well, I wasn't actually going there, but in that sense, thank you. Anyone listening, that's about the soul coding, RNA, DNA, stories galore. They're not actual case notes. People thought they were, but it's channeled. My work's always channeled. And if you're into wanting to see the rejection syndrome, that's the book to go with. But hey, let's come back to where I was going with it, which is fixed. We get fixed by what people are saying around us because we don't want to upset them. We don't want to lose them, because better to have something that's negative than nothing at all.
Exactly. We have a question here. How does DNA affect our spiritual growth?
Well, it's the other way around. How does your spiritual growth affect your DNA? Thank you for that question. Well, basically, before we're ever coming into the body, let alone mum being pregnant, we've been watching our ancestors from the powers that be up above in the oneness, waiting for our turn to turn up. And so when we watched all that, we know the line of history that's happened. And so when we come into the anatomical physical body of the womb, a mother, we take on 100% of mother, her DNA on father and mother's side. We take in the DNA of their father and mother on either side. So I did the book. Oh, yeah. Sounds like I'm promoting, but thanks for the question. Donald Trump, The Enigma of Society. It's explained in there because we talked about all his ancestors, not him and not his work. Okay. It was all about how he was set up to arrive and do what he did and leave, which is what's happened. This is what we do. So for me, as an example, I have ancestry on both my mother and father's side where we had psychics and healers and lecturers and teachers. Thank you, Katie. And so I got that in my DNA. It was automatic for me to want to be a psychic. And of course, I was doing that as soon as I could talk, giving people messages. And that's been my absolute in terms of my journey throughout this life. Any great sage, any great person we can think of, and I'm not aligning myself with them, I'm only mentioning as an example, for example, Jesus or the 12 disciples, or Ezekiel, if we go back far enough, to anyone who's born today, who's got their psychic skills. They're downloading from the oneness ancestry stuff that can be repeated and recycled and rejuvenated and regenerated. So it's not new. We're just bringing it up in a different form.
In this form, you can go more out from this book.
Let's Discover Your Baby Spirit. I loved that book when I wrote that because it helped me a great deal with my own children in retrospect. I always thought I was an indigo child, and it was only when I've closed the final page that they said to me, no, you are a liquid crystal child. And of course, now I see so many liquid crystal children coming in. What does it mean? They're psychic in the knowing sense. They're bringing with them the history through the DNA into the conscious mind. And they will go up to people just like I did and say, well, so-and-so and this and this and that and that. And the parents are sitting there going, how do you know all that? There's a little boy, for example, on David Letterman's show years ago who was 4 years old, and he could name all the dinosaurs. And David asked him, did your mum and dad teach you? He said, oh, no. He said, well, how did you find it? He said, I read it in a book. He said, you can read? He said, yes, I've been reading since I was 2. And then he said, well, why were you interested in dinosaurs? He said, because I was there and I remember seeing them. That's a liquid crystal child. And I watched that and I went, oh, yeah, that's how I was.
we just for those who are just asking there, Laurie, where do we find Dr. Margaret's books? You can go up into Amazon, search Dr. Margaret Rogers Van Coops or Margaret Rogers Van Coops. You will find the books up on Amazon. Also, I'm in the midst of putting up a few other books as well, which we'll mention a little later towards the end of the show. But you can also go over to somafusionmedia.com and you'll find all the book listings there as well.
And your own.
Oh, and my own.
And a title?
Oh, I hate promoting my books. Not because, well, I do, because my original books actually, because what a lot of people don't know is that I started out as an erotic author. So I do have erotic books out there first and foremost is what I promote. But after that, I did do a lot of self-help devotional books. And so those are well worth looking at. If you, so if you look up Katie Kamara, The Velvet Rope Wisdom, or Katie Kamara, The Velvet Rope Erotica, you're going to find a lot of my work. I have been doing this for, well, shoot, I've been writing for almost, next year will be a decade.
Mm.
And so I'm not so worried about so much of my books right now. I was scheduled to release 6 books of my own this year. However, as with all the work that I do, I don't know how I'm going to do that, but I'm going to try. I've had offers to publish some of my books to have helped do that, but which I'm considering. But like, again, you can find all of my books on Amazon as well, or if you go to somafusionmedia.com. For those who don't know, I am actually a publisher, so I can offer a service to publish your books as well.
Yeah, she's brilliant. Okay, you know what? You pressed a button in me that reminded me of something. When I was in England, I was working for a publishing company. Up until then, I had not written any books. I was just a public speaker, well known all over Europe and England and stuff, you know, for metaphysical stuff. But I always said, I'm not a writer, because my teacher in school told me, you know, S through every word, that I would never make a writer because I couldn't spell for toffee, and put me down in front of the whole class many, many times. I was dyslexic. I couldn't see, my words were boxed up. Now I got the computer. But hey, I was working for this company. My point of this story is that I was doing the Yoga Today magazine. And while I was there, they asked me to manage the girly magazines, in quotes, girly, sexual things. And sometimes they were minus a sexy story. And guess who was channeling sexy stories? Under the name of John somebody or other. A pen name. Yeah, because they had to fill every page, because, you know, when you do a magazine, the back and fronts and 64 pages, you know, you have to get all your ads in and stuff as well. I learned a lot in that year about it. And during that time, I wrote Regenesis 1, which you've published. And I'm still working on getting Regenesis 2 finished. So that opened me up to wanting to write. And as you know, I'm verbose with writing. So what I'm saying here by giving that story is we need the outside influences of people to come in and make us face being uncomfortable. When the young guys, and they were young guys, came to me and said, we need you to write something. And I'm like, what? Because I do it for the Yoga Today magazine, or, you know, the other ones. And I said, no, we don't want that kind of, we want a sexy one. And I was writing on one of those old-fashioned teleprinters. That's how long ago it was. And I just said, what? How long is it going to be? And how many words and stuff like that? Because the way I used to think in those days. And I just sat down at that thing, because it's a typewriter, and off I went.
Yeah.
And the stuff that came out of me, wow.
Yeah, I have said myself that I don't even know where the stuff that I write, and I write on a very consistent basis. You know, I do, and people can see that live as I post them. They are in real time as I'm writing them. You can go and see them mostly on Facebook. So that the stuff that I do up on Facebook is not just academics, that is also channeling, 100% channeling. Where I sometimes look at my own work and I'm like, I don't even know where is this coming from? So, you know, but I write it, and I too was told that you know, I failed English miserably. I failed it. I hated it. I didn't do it. But now I write. I write for my life.
Mm.
I have said so many times that, you know, I will seriously write until my fingers bleed, because that's how much of a devoted writer that I really am. I'm very, very highly prolific. And so, you know, sometimes it's very hard to keep up with my processing, because I'm constantly in the mood to write all the time. Now, had I have not been kicked up the butt by, well, I shouldn't say that. That's not quite accurate, but, you know, in a way, you know, kicked up the butt by a very, very, very dear friend of mine, God love him, that if I had not have been given that opportunity by him to say, hey, maybe you should write something, I would never have gotten the opportunities of a lifetime that I've received from that. Because 3 months prior to publishing my first ever book back in 2013, I already had Hollywood on my butt, so to speak, interested in actually turning my books into I didn't even publish, and I thought myself was an amateur writer at that. I had Hollywood on my butt. You know,
Your story and mine is the same, you know, same thing. You know, I was pushed into writing by a friend. I was asked if I wanted to turn my first novel into a movie and so on. And it's amazing how similar our lives are. I don't want to quit your story, but I want you to move on for how we found our balance. So I had the breakdown, you had crisis. And so now we want to sort of go, I think, a little bit more into people who are sort of more having issues like autism, or their brain is overworking. You know, we got a lot of kiddies right now who they can't write, but they can draw and paint fantastically. Right? You got one like that, right? And so this is important. I think we need to move on from talking about our brain box in terms of what we've done intellectually, but more about how these emotions come up, they well up. And I remember, for example, myself back in those days, because I had a lot of art as well in me, that three things I want to mention. One is, in those days, we had paper doilies that you put on the plate put the fancy cakes on. And I used to color those, and I was creating a mandala. And I didn't even know what the word mandala was. And my mom would look at them and she'd say, wow, that's really pretty. Why did you do that? And I'd say, well, it means love. Or I'd say, this means going on a journey somewhere. You know, and I'd explain it while I was drawing it. And these kids today, they would do that. They would draw something, they would tell you all about it. And their drawing is so good. I mean, it's not like scribbles like, here's a clown, it just looks like this. They draw a real clown, you know, shade it just so and so on. So, you know, don't put your child down if where I want to go with this, or music, you know, playing piano or you know, the arts, the crafts, they're coming through these children because this is how they need to express themselves. And they may not be doing well with math or English or science. Don't put them down, because if you do, they're going to feel insecure. They're going to block that art, and they'll be trying as hard as anything to be a mathematician or whatever, be a professor, especially dad's a professor, and these models are around, and they end up getting slightly depressed. And here I'm going to point out, because I know one of my kids went through this, would not eat.
Yeah. And I just want to say too, you know, we're talking here, this show is completely unscripted. We usually come up with a theme and then we talk about it. Sometimes we veer off, sometimes we don't. But what we're getting at here is that coming back to the home, we're talking about, you know, recognizing the signs of mental illness. These practices that we're showing you about writing and art and, you know, what else is there? Art, painting.
Even body, dancing, you know, music, whatever it is, is an expression.
And a lot of people who are creative artists have a lot of, not all of them, but some have a gift of melancholy. It's not a mental illness per se, but it is a way to express themselves and everything that they're going through, so that they can get it out. It is a form of healing. It is because what people don't understand is that we are healing each and every single day to the day we die, and when we take our last breath, we're still healing. And majority of us go reflect on the negativity on the last dying breath. And so when we express ourselves in such a way, we are also coming up with all sorts of issues and problems and that come in our psyche. Now, the other thing is too, is that when a lot of people who are artists, who are in that stage of melancholy, they will come out with beautiful dark art. However, when it's interpreted, they're like, oh, that's a beautiful piece of work. But really underneath it, there's layers and layers and layers and layers of emotion that they can't outwardly express or speak about because they don't know how.
That's very right. As I was saying with me, I can give an example. When I was in my first marriage, I got the 2 children, one in my belly and one born. And I had this urge to paint, and I painted an orange background. And then on that, I drew this black me from the rear on a pathway. I knew that this black me was walking down this road on this pathway into this orange creative color. And I want to say here that colors, whatever your child or adult is using, like what was his name? He had his blue mood, his red mood, his green. He was a famous painter. I can't think of his name right now. In the 1800s, he did the all blue paintings, all red paintings, all green. What was his name? I can't remember, sorry. But anyway, that was a period where he was known to be unbalanced. And it was the same with the one that cut off his ears. Why can't I think of all these names? I guess it's not important. But they had a lot of mental issues during that time, the artists, you know. And then we have, you know, people today who they still can't talk very well, but they can draw and they can express themselves. So communications, you know, people who have, you know, the kind of brain where they're clever and they're strong, but they don't speak much because they don't know that they're going to be accepted. That's a form of depression. Because they're thinking that if they do tell what they know, someone is going to critique them, and they've learned that in early life. I mean, even kids to kids are mean. You know, I remember kids pulling my pigtails when I was a kid. Great. And my other friends egging me on to give this person a swipe, and I did, and I lived for guilt for that for ages. It's in my book, my journey into the oneness book. But the bottom line is, there are so many. As a parent, you're guarding your kids, you're watching them, you're trying to rear them right, and you know, one of them may be really bright and just gets it all, and the other one is slow and holding back, and you know, and you're thinking, what's wrong with this kid, you know, and you want them to be as bright as the other one, and so on. And the bigger the family, and for example, my son Warren did a talk with me, and I put that on the show, remember, about his 8 children and how he's learned to see each one differently and let them tell him what they're going through in their way and let them expound and grow. And that's a very important thing, I think, for the generations now. We grew up with this. I'm your parent, I know what's best for you. You're going to do this, you're going to learn the math, you're going to do this, you've got to get an A, you can't get a C. And then you grew up, you're my child's generation, with, okay, I want you to find something that's really good and apply yourself so that you've got something when you leave. It's still another form of control. Okay, but now you're a mom, and I see this in my great grandchildren, or little ones, that the bottom line is they need to be allowed to find their own footsteps and praise them no matter what it is, even if they, I even do it with my dog. Like my dog did a poop in the wrong place, and I went, "Oh, you're a good boy, you did a poop." But, and he's like, "Oh," So, it's confusing. Are you praising or are you telling off? And these kids are getting that from us because we're trying to be with it and say, whatever you do is fine by me. But in the next breath, we're saying, but why did you do it? And you should have done it this way. So we got a lot of kids growing up who don't know, they can't make choices.
It's the same with a child that is scolded for doing the right thing, however, the wrong way of doing it. It's like, and by the way, it was Van Gogh with the art. And so, yeah, like for instance, if a child has an accident, so to speak, children are going through their potty training all the time. Like they go through that for a period of time until they become used to whatever they have to do. And I mean, you still have children that are like 7 years old that's still having accidents. I mean, hell, we still got 50-year-old women that are having accidents. Who knows? It doesn't change. But but there's nothing to be ashamed about it. And the fact of the matter is that the reason why I'm bringing this up is because at a young age, we've been told that it's not okay to have, a toileting accident. And so we get scolded for it, but it's the most naturalist bodily function that there is. And as we get older, it's like we get a sense of embarrassment, like for women who have weak bladders or have had many children who have gone down that route. I just can't. We have accidents. It's nothing but natural, and we look at ourselves because of the way that we've been brought up, and we may have been scolded for the accidents that we've had. We now go into this sense of embarrassment and guilt and shame because
and judgment.
Yeah, that too, especially in public. But what I'm saying is that we go into this and that goes into breastfeeding of all things. We get judged about the things that we do, so we mentally are repeating the patterns that we have been brought up with and continuing on them on into adulthood. And then of course you wonder why a lot of us are all crazy and all out of and confused and all out of the place because we don't know what is black and what is white.
And also the other thing that I really hate is, and my husband and I did it all the time, like, when we were younger, blah, blah, blah. Now kids today don't, blah, blah, blah. But we have to realize that when we were younger, there wasn't computers, and we discussed this on another show, but at home, in the environment, I still believe, no matter who we are, that we need socializing, and COVID is teaching us that we're not able to socialize, and we're realizing that. But touch is very important. And a lot of these young children, they're told, shouted at, told they're wrong, go in your room. There isn't it may be a slap physical touch, but I'm talking about hugging, looking eyes to eyes. Are you looking at me? Not shouting, yelling in their ear, but quietly saying, look, you need to listen to mummy. But first of all, I want to listen to you. Why did you do that? Oh, okay, but now I'm going to tell you there's another way to do it. Are you looking at my eyes? You looking at my face? Good boy, good girl. Now, this is the way I would like you to do it. Parents don't talk like that. I didn't talk like that to my kids. I screamed, I yelled. I didn't know any better, but I learned.
Well, see, here's the thing is that I did say this on a couple of shows prior to this about conscious parenting. A lot of people don't take a step back, especially when they are, the child,
Worried.
child
money issues, all that stuff is in the way as well.
Child is having a tantrum, so therefore you know, I'm going to get worked up because my child is worked up, but I'm going to take the approach that or discipline a disciplined approach and scold them for it or spank them for it because they're the ones that are screwing up and not realizing what we're doing to them, because you can't fight fire with fire. You can't fight fire with fire. I would want to mention here, Ted said, sounds a lot like council culture. Yeah, it is a lot like council culture because we just now have a label to it. Unfortunately, this has been happening for a very, very, very long time. Council culture is where somebody of you know, it could be seen as general, but somebody of status, like celebrity or something like that, they do everything that they can. You know, they receive the high praise. They are doing well, and you know, I think they're talking about Simone Biles is one of them, the gymnast that pulled out because of mental health issues. She was, I mean, how many medals has she won over the years? And then all of a sudden she pulls out of something that she could have won for the United States.
Because she lost her balance. Yeah.
Yeah. And now she's been scorned upon.
Wait, I want to interfere here and say something. She lost her balance in herself, mentally, physically doing the twirls, but more important, she's looking at the inner balance of her mind, body, spirit, and soul. And I was glad for her that she made that choice to be her own boss. It gets me emotional. I always feel people, I can't help it when they're learning something. Yeah.
And that's the thing about council culture is when you get to that top of the mountain and you're highly praised, and then all of a sudden you personally, not the people that are watching you, and you like, and we're talking about Simone Biles, who is an influencer. So the influencer gets to the top of that mountain, and everybody that is following them, so, and she decides to make a personal decision, look inwards, and then everybody around her suddenly says, "Oh no, you're a piece of shit."
Yeah, unfortunately, that's what I talked about earlier on, the judgment. And you know, we're taught to judge. You know, when we're very young, mum comes along and she says, okay, here's 3 candies. You want this one, or this one? Well, I want them all. No, you can't have them all. You can have this one, or this one. Well, I like this one. All right, we can have it. No, but I really want this one. Okay, well, make up your mind. You've got to have one or the other. And before you know it, that child is taught, I cannot make a decision.
Yep.
I can't get what I want. I have to get what mummy wants me to have. You know, we're just so not aware of the way the brain works. And I want to interject here, you know, that my research over the years with psychology and psychiatry and all the things that I've done as a medium with thousands and thousands of people, it's just amazing. I'm just mind boggled when I think how many thousands of people I've had one-on-one or classes with. But the bottom line is I saw myself in every one of them. And I'm grateful for that because I saw my brain in them. And so that helped me to understand just how amazing our brains are. And the fact that science has proved that our brains work faster than the speed of light, which is 280,000 miles per second or something. If I got that right, I don't know. But, you know, we are amazing individuals in anatomical, biological, sensory, in every sense of the word. And we have this essence that is our soul, that is the spirit of all that is. Well, we forget that, and we spend so much time looking outward. I want to be the best on the computer, or I want to be the best pianist, or whatever it is. You know, it's like, why do we want to be the best? Why can't we just be the best to ourselves?
You know why? It's because we're so too busy trying to be the best for somebody else. We're people pleasing. All of pleasing. We want to compete. It's only natural that we want to compete, and it's only natural that we want to please other people by competing because it makes us feel good. It gives us whatever
until we lose
that adrenaline rush to say, hey, yeah, I achieved or accomplished something and I'm better than you. It's always,
but most people have a perception of loss.
yes.
And by the way, we're going to do some talks on this on tomorrow's Education Centre, where we're going to talk about fear, pain, anger, guilt, and loss. And I want to say here that I've got a workbook that is free. I don't know if you've got it up yet because you're still so busy with everything, but I have this workbook, which is a free download for people to get when you put it up and work on themselves and write down. And I want them to keep a copy of that, clean copy of that, so that down the road when they're working with us, they can refresh and do it again and again over time and see how they grow and evolve through the courses and classes that we're going to teach. So that's one thing. And then the other thing I'm going to say here is I have a book. I can't mention the words because it gets blocked when I mention the words, but that is a giveaway. And if you, Kate is going to put that up. When she has, you can go there and download it for free. And if you want to translate it into another language, you're welcome to. Just let us know so we can have a copy. We want it to go worldwide. And I will say that it is everything that you need to read from the oneness. People like Jesus, Siddhartha Buddha, Cornelius Tacitus, Archangel Haniel, Socrates. I channeled all these people, 80 pages of it. And we can't mention words because everyone blocks things if we mention words. So now it's a secret. You have to go find out. And that should stimulate you to, I'm curious because I want people to be curious so people can learn, because curiosity is what we need.
It killed the cat.
Well, that was one way of looking at it. But hey, if we weren't curious, for example, if we didn't wonder how to trap light into a light bulb like Edison, we wouldn't have Las Vegas lit up, would we?
No, exactly.
So we need curiosity. Yeah.
With that said, I do want to mention too here that tomorrow, this is a good time to plug it too. Tomorrow we are going to be doing well, Margaret is anyway, not me. I'm just technical support.
And not just, most importantly.
The glue that tries to hold everything together. But no, she's going to be doing a talk tomorrow. It's going to go for about 90 minutes at 2 p.m. Pacific time. She's going to be doing it on psychic centers, learn how to use them consciously for or in your daily life. And I'll let Margaret explain it to you, but I have put up the link. It will be put up reshared. If you haven't already seen it up on social media, it is plastered everywhere, literally. So please go look at the promo. If you are a follower of Soma Fusion Media, you're going to see it up on the page. I'll repost it again. If you are a follower of myself or Margaret, you are going to see it right at the top. You can't miss it. In order to join the meeting, you will have to have Zoom, and the link for the Zoom meeting is going to be there. We will let you in at 2 p.m. sharp. For those who live on the East Coast, that would mean it is 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and 2 p.m. Pacific.
And what are we doing? I'm going to explain your psyche to you so that you can use it every day of your life and make some very positive choices. I'm not going to say any more than that right now. You can read a little bit more about what we actually can do there, but I want you to have Q&A. So I talk and ask you, what do you think? What do you feel? You can pick my brains. This is an intro to help you understand just how psychic you are. And then if you're interested, we'll go ahead and do a beginner's course. Yeah. So thank you for that.
Of course, I'll be doing some of my free talks that will be on the very basics of toxic toxic relationships. It'll be, I will put up a date and I'll put up a promo about it, but it'll be on toxic recovery. So if you don't know what that is, it's basically learning about red flags of relationships. And of course, I actually will be teaching an entire course on it. And also starting by Margaret's suggestion, a trauma recovery group as well. And so that'll be a little later. We're a long way off from that yet, but I will put up the talks that I'll be doing as well.
Yeah, we're very enthusiastic about teaching, and my dream has always been to have a university. Of course, I didn't know about, I was a kid, university was a full walls building, but now of course it's online. But yeah, we want to share our knowledge and wisdom, and we have mentioned in other shows we're looking for other teachers who have different things. I've got someone who wants to teach Reiki and things like that as well. So we're working to get it together, and if anyone out there would like to support and help Katie with some technical work on the sites, we could do with help too, because she's overwhelmed. Just get in touch with us and we'll go from there. Okay, so can I come back to the topic? And I want to say, we've talked about childhood and how parents in some way are doing what they think is right in controlling their child, but they're actually suppressing their personality, their character, the child's character, because of the rules and the regulations rather than the way of talking that I was explaining earlier on. And so some of the symptoms that I've been dealing with that is really acute measure of depression is, for example, your child won't go to kindergarten or school. And they suddenly develop these colds or these headaches, or, they start limping across the room. I've hurt my leg. And to them, it's genuine. And the leg does hurt because it's a muscle pain. And muscle pains are a direct reflection of the brain. The same with throwing up, vomiting, nerves. I'm sure many of you adults can remember, feeling you have to go for an interview or something for a job when you're 15, and you hope you get the money because mommy and daddy's got no money, and you want to contribute, and you throw up, and with nerves. I know when I took my first driving test, I was like, and of course I failed. But the bottom line is we go through a tremendous amount of stress when we're in anxiety about performance. And performance doesn't have to be in a show, in a production. It could be a performance. It's just like walking into school, right? So depression starts when we're very young. And a lot of children today are very depressed. They don't have outlets. They have maybe one friend who they sit and commiserate with. They have no one to talk to who is really going to listen. So I'm sending out a red flag here to every parent. If your child is saying there's something physically wrong, they're not wanting to go to school or work or whatever it is they're doing constantly, they're going to the fridge and opening the fridge and saying there's nothing to eat in there when it's full up. They're walking around the house with headset on and they're not talking to you. They're blocking you out because they don't want to hear you because you're going to critique them on something. If they're playing video games all the time and they don't do their homework, these are all signs of mental issues with emotional trauma going on inside. You got a few you want to add to it? Because there's loads.
I mean, 95% of the world is going through some sort of psychosomatic illness of some sort or trauma. We just don't recognize it as that because we're so interested in labeling it with, people who go into psychology. We're so used to, for me though, I'm a holistic psychologist. I'm not someone that's going to readily jump into the textbook stuff, although I do have experience in it. However, I will say that a lot of the textbook psychologists that you go and see are readily able to jump into giving you medication for a temporary solution. They're not really actually finding the solutions to actually help you heal, because entirely when you heal, you have to heal the mind, body, and the soul. You can't just heal and numb something. That starts in the psyche. You're not changing the psyche, you're numbing it.
And also that another thing about it is people will keep comparing, and we have to teach everyone, stop comparing yourself with other people. You are unique, you are yourself, you are individual. Yes, you got the DNA and programming from your mother and ancestry and so on, but you have a choice how you use it. You don't have to copycat them.
No, and for me personally, though, just like everybody else, I'm no different from just because I've done this, and this, and this from personal experience, doesn't mean I'm any better than you. We're still all human, but we're just running the rat race at different paces. And that goes the same with spirituality. We're all walking our journey at different paces. That we cannot seek the solutions when there are people out there who are highly spiritual and they're way up here in their spiritual growth. However, someone here who's just starting out might feel a little intimidated by someone that's trying to give them advice or spiritual advice, and whatever they say in their head is like, well, they're not listening to me, so they just whatever. And so, but it's another form of judgment.
Well, there's another thing about this too. If you're a spiritual master teacher period up there, you wouldn't be talking to people down here as a spiritual master teacher, because you would know to come down on this level and be with them. And not that bragging or anything, but I spend a lot of time with transients on the street and prostitutes and people like that in England when I was younger, and even here in America when I first came over, which to me was far more important to be there and just share and talk and how's your life and what's going down and that kind of thing. And if you can just give one seed of an idea, it's going to make a change in them. And that's the joy of being a spiritual person, is to give that seed. As Jesus said, if you throw it on fallow ground, it'll grow, but it'll grow crooked and funny. But if you can get that pure seed into the heart and the soul of that person, there's a smile on the face, there's joy. Even if you mess up, I tried, I had a go, and I've had a go, so I know a little bit more about myself.
Exactly. And for those who don't know what I do in my spare time, I actually go down to the streets. If you are in the DC area, I actually go to the streets of Georgetown here in DC, and I actually see a lot of the homeless people that are down there, who are just sitting on the streets and with their sleeping bags and whatnot. They're up on Wisconsin Avenue. Of course, this is a very rich area. Of course, there are going to be a lot of homeless people that are attracted to this area for obvious reasons, but I don't know how many people of those people that I've actually stopped to actually talk to, because a lot of them don't have anything to talk to. They sit there with their cups and they jingle their change and whatnot, but none of them have had anybody to talk to.
And they don't know how to talk to you because nobody talks to them. Exactly. You're reminding me of an event in New York years ago when my husband and I were over there. I was up doing the mind, body, and spirit thing as a keynote speaker then. And we'd just been into one of the New York nice diners, and came out, and there was this man outside with a cup, and it was freezing cold. It was winter. And I just looked at him and I said to my husband, we need to buy him food, because I knew he needed it. So I went up to him and I said, how many of you need food? And he looked at me. He said, my wife and my children. And I said, just wait here. So my husband took him in. I waited here, sorry. I said, take him in, and we bought him the food. He came out crying. And he said, how did you know I needed the food? Because he had the cup. I said, no, I'm a healer. I said, take this food home. And then I gave him a $20 bill as well, which was not my money in those days. And everyone who heard about this afterwards said, oh, you're such a good person. And I said, no, I'm not a good person. I felt the soul. I felt it in me. He giving to him made me full of joy that I had been able to help someone. And I will say that throughout my life, I wouldn't dump any part of what I've been able to do, because it's made those people coming into my life, needing my help, made me grow, become who I am. And I loved every one of them. As you can tell, I get very emotional about it because they're my journey.
Yeah. Well, the reason why I brought it up is because 3 days ago, I went to the store. I was dropping my son off to school, and I saw exactly that, a man jingling his change, looking for money. And so, I just happen to, it's my regular route. I kind of go in there, I get a chocolate milk and blah, 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 blah. It's kids. It's what I do. I spoil my son sometimes. But I went into the store and I'm like, you know what? I turned around to Daryl Jr. and I said to him, I said, that man at the front, I said, what does he look like to you? And I talked to him, I brought him down to level. And, it's a part of me teaching my children to show kindness and compassion as well. And he turned around to me and goes, can we get an extra pack of cookies? And I said, what are we going to get an extra pack of cookies for? And he goes, I want to get it for the man at the front. Obviously, the conversation that I started with him made him realize that, of course, I knew that I was stimulating that conversation because I wanted to help, let go. And we ended up buying a couple of bottles of water. It was hot. It's been hot here in DC. Bought a couple of bottles of water and a packet of cookies or whatever. And then we took it, we paid for it and took it out the front of the building, and we handed it over to this man. Actually, I gave it to my son to hand it over to him. I could have done the same thing, but I chose for him to do it. And he turned around to me and he said, no, ma'am, I don't want to, I'm not hungry. I said, no, that's not the point. I see that you are in whatever issue you're going through. And all I'm doing is giving you some food, even if it was just a packet of cookies and some water, that it's still something. You know what I mean? I could have gotten a whole heap of stuff, but it's something to stand there, because he was standing out in the building and I knew that he was going to stand out there for hours on end, waiting for that small change that he would be given. And he needed some water and just a basic snack. And so he's like, no, ma'am, I don't want this. I can't get this. No. And I said, no. I said, you may not be hungry right now, but you might be hungry a little later. And if you're not hungry now, what I want you to do is to pay it forward. Give it to somebody. And there was a man across the road. And I walked away. I did walk away. And you know what I saw him do? He walked straight across the road to a man that was completely more destitute than him. And he went and handed everything that I gave him.
And that was your lesson to him, and that was his moment of heart. And that's what we need the young ones to learn, and well, actually everybody to learn. I think we've got too many people who are shoving religion down one another's throats. Philosophy is much better right now because you can rationalize like you just did with your story. Whereas if you go into religion, you have to pray this way and you have to say Our Father this way, or if you're a Buddhist, you have to Omanar and do Oma Papa and whatever it is, and I can't remember all these words right now. And we have got to a point where we have to understand that we are all of one core energy, spirit. And no matter who we are or where we live or what country we are, we be man or woman, we are equal. And we've got a long way to go before the Middle East countries are going to stop putting women down. But at least we've arrived here in Europe and America, and even Russia's coming around eventually to understanding. But no, the cultures in the Asian worlds, the women are still put down. Even though I've been over there teaching for 20 years, the difference that I've seen that I made, and not just me, others coming as well, but I can only talk about my experiences in taking women from abused, misused, controlled situations with husbands who are so unhappy with responsibilities, they drunk all the time and beat the women up. If they were still harakiri, everybody would be dead, when I first went there, this kind of thing. And today, when you go there, the youngsters are modernized in the American style because Americans been there and the influence, but still underneath, the women are saying, I rely on a man, he's got to marry me, I have to give him a baby so that he's got a line to continue. And, I have to this and I have to that and so on. And I'm happy to say that there's at least 2,000 students that I trained, fully trained all the way, who are now counselors. And one of them, Remy Kanai, who's our vice president on Universal Christchurch now, because she was ordained, is out there. She's teaching at universities and stuff, and she is brilliant because she had the advantage over many that she spoke English, so I could be with her and talk on our own as well as all the classes she did. And so there's still a large point here of this world of women who are in Africa, India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, and every other stones, and the Orientals who are not accepted as equal partners. And we've got a lot of work to do to be models as women for the future of mankind, to understand that, as I wrote in my journey into the Oneness book, that women are divine love, and which is feminine, and males are divine wisdom, and they swap over. So divine wisdom becomes love, and divine love becomes wisdom in the physical form. And we have to mix this within us. And we can't just be all in the head and cut off our necks. And we can't be all in the heart and cut off our head. And that's what we've seen people doing over the last 200 years. It's either I'm very clever and you're an idiot, or I'm so emotionally talented and you're ridiculous because you can't do what I do, ego. It's got to go.
Or you're just too much and I can't handle you.
Well, it's the same thing, isn't it? You're emotionally, I can't handle you.
Too intense, too this, too that, too wild, too way out there, too much of anything.
So coming to the brain and the heart, harmonizing those, what we've got to look at is how we take people from these mental or emotional, because they are separated. Emotional depression is where they act out, they yell, they scream, they sob, they cry, they worry, they body language, that kind of thing. That's emotional depression. The mental depression is logical. They're rationalizing, everything is destructive and default and not fitting in and so on. And so these people have to be harmonized between the part that's overworked to embrace the part that isn't, and vice versa. I've spent years working on people to bring that harmony in mind, body, and spirit on the table with the crystal acupuncture and all the therapies that I do. And I'm hoping that the many students, over 20,000 students that I taught and counseled in Japan, will leave a mark, and then I did the same in England with another 30,000 according to Spring Guides. So at least I've made a mark, but it's not about me making the mark. They need to make the mark. Yeah. We're just guides. We're just showing the light. It's up to people to want to learn themselves. There's so many metaphysical books now. When I was a kid, there weren't any. None at all. And now you're just swamped online with people galore writing. So I don't think anybody's got a justification of an excuse that there isn't a book somewhere that would do it for you.
Yeah.
And the same with therapies. There's people are inventing therapies all the time. When I invented my crystal therapies, there weren't any. Now everybody's got crystal therapies, So whatever is out there, don't sit and be in misery emotionally or mentally. Go find your tools and work on yourself.
Yeah. And you shouldn't have any professional telling you what to do without you being able to, for yourself, to be accessing your critical thinking skills, to be in order to make your own decisions, and that's why I have a big problem about the psychiatric and psychology field when they give out medications first as a first priority, rather than actually work on what's and so, by accessing that critical thinking skills, we are able to make better informed decisions and to be guided on the right path where we need to actually be in order to kickstart that healing process for whatever trauma or whatever form of mental illness that we have, in order to succeed ourselves to a point where we can be talking about everything that we're going through. We're able to outwardly express, we're able to, not just inwardly, but outwardly express everything that we need to be. Because I know that there are a lot of, and in talking about men in particular, men have been taught to suppress their emotions. They've been taught to, there are quite a few rare occasions that you find a lot of conscious men out there. And I'm just going to say conscious men because they are aware of everything that they're going through, and can outwardly and inwardly express everything that they're experiencing. However, with the toxic masculinity culture, you're finding a lot of men who are very, very unequal. They dwell in that because they've been taught to be this macho man. They've been taught to suppress because, the heart doesn't lead the way, the mind does. And so a lot of men, even throughout, even up to the age of 70, 80 years old, doesn't matter what age you are. A lot of these guys have had suppressed emotions for so long, and you wonder why you see a lot of acts of violence and a lot of aggression in men, because they're just pent up and they've bottled up all of their emotions over a lifetime, and they're going, oh, smack, done. And now suddenly I've committed a murder, or suddenly I've divorced my wife, or I've had a bad breakup, or I've lost my family members, or I've done something so atrocious that I can't recover from that. And so now I'm back to being miserable again. And
I'm going to interrupt here just a little bit, and add to that the religions of the Eastern world, where they're taught it's okay to take a life. Mm-hmm. Because of their justification, just because they're men. Okay. And we've seen that in war scenarios and so on, and of course world wars and all the rest of it. So let's not forget that they've been trained to be like that over centuries, thousands of centuries of carry a knife, carry a bow and arrow, carry a bomb now, whatever it is. They've got to learn that they have had lives where they've been females as well.
But you've also got to remember too that many women are going through that stage
now. Yeah,
many women are going through that, and and that is because they are their emotions have been suppressed by the traumas, perhaps by the traumas that they've experienced over a lifetime, from repetitive acts of sex abuse, child abuse, acts of domestic violence. I mean, part of intrafamily violence. There's a whole category here of things that are going. That's why I said earlier about psychosomatic. 95% of the world has a psychosomatic ailment of some sort, and the reason being is because our DNA and our memory actually remembers all of the traumas that we have held in a lifetime, and so the next time that we do touch that hot stove, we're going to remember it, and we're going to say, okay, well, and that is part of the reason why we don't touch that stove again, is because we we remember it. Our nerves and our sensations and everything that is associated with psyche that is in relation to that hot stove basically says we're not going to touch that hot stove anymore because it causes trauma.
And, that's, of course, a lot of things I've written about in books. But the thing that I really want to leave people with is don't just trust what you believe that you've absorbed from teachers, doctors, ministers, lawyers, bankers, high-powered people who are supposed to make $20 million for you tomorrow. Come back to yourself. Come back to your heart and soul. What do you love to do? It might be just gardening. Okay, so be a gardener. You don't have to make millions of dollars. You'll make enough food by loving your plants to feed your family. If you're, this is back in the days before computers, people would go what they loved to do. After the World War II, they were rebuilding. That's how it had to be anyway, because there wasn't any money. There wasn't anything. So you went and you volunteered and you did whatever you loved to do and you built a career in it. Today, these kids are taught, you got to grow up and make $1 million. Psychologically, you give a child $1 and you say, this is a lot of money. This is your pocket money. You think twice before you spend it. Then they grow up and they hear $10. This is even more money. It's 10 times what you had before. You take this and realize when you're an adult, you'll have to make 100 times this. Well, by the time you've got your $10, you're like, oh my God, how am I going to make 100 million? They're depressed at the idea that they've got to go out there and work at some kind of job, i.e. a computer tech, a scientist, some revolutionary something or other. Everybody has got talents. And if it's to be a gardener or to weave baskets, or it's important, we need those baskets as much as we need, we don't need plastic anymore. This is where I'm coming from. We need homegrown made things, crafts, arts, things. We don't need plastic. We don't need metal. We don't need all of this. We're going into a new age of sound. Sound will bring all sorts of things.
What you were just talking about was high functioning anxiety. I actually did a post about it today. And is what you see versus what a high functioning anxiety or person of anxiety actually is experiencing. And so what you see, which is exactly what you're describing, is somebody that is detail oriented, outgoing, active, super helpful, hardworking, performs well under pressure, and they show an exuberant amount of loyalty. But what they're underneath it all, what they're actually experiencing is overthinking, people pleasing, inability to slow down, trouble saying no, fear of failure. That's a big one. Procrastinating or over planning or poor boundaries. I don't see it like that because most people aren't taught psychology. So this is basic psychology right here. And so when you think that you're seeing somebody, what you see, like I said, detail oriented, outgoing, active, super helpful, hardworking, all of that jazz, and you're highly praising them, on the outskirts of that, they're actually doing the emotionally and mentally, they're not with it. Absolutely.
Because they've got to keep up the appearances and climb the ladder more and more and more till who cares? Because they got used to them climbing the ladder, so they're not appreciated anymore anyway.
It took me a long time to get over that little hurdle right there, because because I was in a toxic relationship. I was made to perform under stress and all of that, because it was work, perform. And then suddenly I went, you know what? Excuse my French, fuck it, whatever. I don't care anymore. I will work at my own pace. Now, a good analogy of that is the tortoise and the hare. If the hare he got stuck somewhere and went around in circles, and there was a beautiful video up on Facebook that I saw about it. They actually had a race between a tortoise and the hare, just to give that analogy. And this rabbit or hare, whichever you want to, this rabbit was going to, they actually had the raceway already set out, and
I think I saw that one. Yeah, go on.
Rabbit went down the race, the little raceway in his lane, and he got halfway and he stopped all of a sudden and started looking around and like in his own little world. But the tortoise kept going. As slow as he did, he kept going. And while the rabbits were still sitting there going, looking around, looking for something to do, not actually focused on the prize itself. And this tortoise made it over the race line, and you wonder why taking it slow, recognizing the signs of mental illness or recognizing the signs of high functioning anxieties that we all experience, when we recognize it, it tells us to slow down before you burn out. We don't ever stop in our lives because we live in such a fast-paced society, we don't ever stop to smell the roses until we're like maybe retired.
Well, in that story, the way you told it, I see both sides, because your rabbit or hare, whatever it is looking around and seeing stuff, while the tortoise is not. And by the time the tortoise gets to the end prize, it's in its shell, exhausted. So, that there's a plus and a minus on either side of this story. And I remember my father actually explaining this one to me in this way, that dedication to an ultimate end could be your downfall, as opposed to getting distracted along the way could be a diversion, that you never complete the race, but ultimately you find a new pathway and that turns out to be better. So we can, all these moral stories and nursery rhymes that we heard as children were all from the old days of history. It's the way people told stories of what happened because they couldn't write. And so word of mouth and minstrels would travel from town to town, singing and acting out the stories of different towns so that the news traveled far and wide. I'm mentioning that because I think we need that again. We need communication to be entertaining, joy, fun, stories, pleasures that allows the children to be involved rather than like I remember, okay, we're all in class, open the books at page something. Margaret, you read that paragraph. Tom, you read that paragraph. Joe, and it's like, well, the cat sat on the mat and the man was very unhappy, and it was so boring, they're all falling asleep. That was not the way to read a book. And I think life is about embellishing the words and using them. And we were having a talk the other day, and I was saying, I cannot stand the capitals for everything. our language is destroyed. We need emotions in that language. We need something that's exciting and enticing for these children so that they want to, eyes open wide and, oh, really? And I want to know more. Instead of, oh, God, she's going to go on and on about this and that. And so
we see this culture of I've got to see it before I read it, rather than read it before I see it. I've had so many people say to me, oh, I don't believe in this because it's textbook. Well, you still have to learn the basics by reading a book of some sort. Doesn't matter what it is, at least attempting to, either way, because at that point you're able to open your critical thinking skills and you're able to see things from a different perspective. And just like the language that you're talking about, also seeing things from a different perspective by using the phrasings that we use in our daily language as well, also has an effect on the way that you speak to people as well.
Mm.
The reason why I'm bringing that up, because I know that you printed it off on your side, is because I wrote something this afternoon that I'm just like, okay, well, I'm going to have a nap. And I do that. I have naps every single day. And so I went ahead and I'm like, okay, I've got to have a nap. Why am I not going to sleep? I know I had something in my head that I really had to write out. And so I did. I wrote it out, not even a mere 4 or 5 hours ago. And it was basically to change your perspective. And I was talking about statements of insensitivity regarding involvement or participation of toxic relationships. You know, I could have used many examples of or phrasings of wordings that we use to, and this is just 2 of them that I thought up at this time, and I'm going to read it. It's for example, perhaps you have had to learn a lesson, or that you pick them or your partner well. And of course, I looked into it. I'm thinking, hang on, while I'm writing, I'm channeling at the same time, and I'm, because I just had to get this thing out.
Mm.
With those two phrasings or 2 quotes that you hear a lot of people saying, and I'm relating it to toxic relationships, and I'm like, okay, well, put it into a different perspective. It might be good and well that you're saying that, but to saying it to someone that is a survivor or a victim of abuse is not exactly the right thing to say, because, and I'm going to rationalize it here, we have the choice, yes, to choose our lovers. That is a very, very true statement. But by saying those 2 statements, perhaps you've had to learn a lesson, or you picked them well, or your partner, it actually implies that you had a choice to be abused. So the reality is that many times a victim is already groomed prior to the actual abuse starting or occurring or noticing, aka love bombing, by absolutely no obligation as a survivor or victim of abuse are you to believe this statement, because at the end of the day, no living person or living being on this planet deserves to be abused of any type. And so basically when I wrote it, I'm like going, hang on, so we are so used to saying these phrasings, these quotes, and if you want to see the full write-up, is actually on my Facebook wall there and on Soma Fusion media page. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it's basically, I wrote it basically just to explain how our moral and our moral compass, our moral conscious compass is so off balance when we think that we mean well. It can be implied by another person as complete opposite, and actually can exacerbate any trauma that we have within ourselves to make problems or issues worse.
Can I interject there? Because it's not on the mirror image. We have to always remember the mirror image is going on time and time again. And so when we're growing up, we're reflecting mother, father in the mirror image in our DNA and RNA. We're copycatting, okay? Then we grow up, and then we want to feel safe. So we attract to us someone who's like mum and dad in a new form, and we mirror image that. And so on and so on. And I did this through 3 marriages. And I can honestly say that the first 2, I was just as bad as my exes, in that they were yelling, screaming at me. I was yelling and screaming at them. They were hitting me. I was running away. No different, Steve, my last husband, was wonderful, but he loved to be negative. And the negativity went into his body. And my story there is struggling to keep him with me. And that was my need. I wanted him with me until I got to a point where I said, I have to let him go. I stopped giving him all that nurturing that he so wanted all the time. Now, I didn't feel guilty about that. I just knew it was his time, especially when he came to me and said, I'm having dreams, I'm dying soon. And I'm like, okay, darling, you're not going to die. But I knew the truth, but I'm a medium, so I live with these things. But the point is that those 3 men in my life brought out all the coding that I needed to get rid of, you know, and stand in my own shoes as me and be me in this energy. And you know what, I'm still not done. I'm still dumping. And so I encourage these young children when I get to work with them and young mothers to start dumping their parents, the womb, the ancestors, the rationale, the excuses, the justifications, and so on, because I see most of the world is still in early stages, but they're in depression.
Yeah. And like I said, going back to what I stated is, perhaps you've learned a lesson, or that you pick them or your partner well, that, it's not up to us to judge. It goes back to judging. It's not up to us to judge, because at that point, someone who is a survivor or a victim of abuse will not rationalize with that. They won't even relate to that statement whatsoever. And they'll actually think that you even though you're unaware about it, they're going to think that you're threatening them. So therefore that it's driving them further down, and you don't even realize it. And of course, we don't consciously realize that half of the things that we say anyway. We just say it because it's just, but we don't realize the implications. And that's the thing. And that's the problem, is that we ourselves, every single one of us has a part of us that's insensitive. We just say it just because we don't have meaning behind it, but we try and mean well, but we really don't. And, there's always going to be a half and half, 50-50 chance that this is going to happen. But at the same time, rather than actually going down a path of saying, hey, well, maybe I said something wrong, or apologizing or something like that, we shouldn't be repeating the same things over and over again, the same patterns. This is why we are so stuck in the ways in our psyche, our mind and body and soul, that it doesn't really matter. We're so stuck in our ways because history is literally repeating itself, and we're doing it unconsciously. And whether we know it or not, we're still not there. We're never going to be there until we've recognized and have that high level of awareness to actually go ahead and fix it. And so by using me and Margaret are on the frontiers of education and awareness, so that we can teach you how to do that, because we don't believe in people that should be completely traumatized and depressed about life, because life is supposed to be enjoyed.
But I'll go for that every which way. And, life is busy now. We have to be focused on that. I mean, when I was a child, come 5 o'clock, everybody shut all the shops, everybody went home, meals were cooked, we had the evenings, we watched, listened to the radio maybe, or we did homework, whatever. But there was time to wander in the park and socialize with neighbors or whatever. There's none of that. We're controlled by this machine that we're actually looking at right now. And here we are now, controlled by having TV available at certain times for people when they get home from work, so they can listen to us and so on. And in a way, I'm grateful that we can reach people this way. And it's a modern way. But however, we're losing our quality of life.
Exactly. And God forbid if the internet turned off right now, because otherwise we'd never be able to do everything. I'd be in chaos.
Well, for me, I being older generation, I've got, oh, good, I can do some knitting and sewing, and I can paint. And none of the kids today know how to knit or sew or embroidery. They don't learn. We had housekeeping in school, when we were kids. I had a grandmother that taught me anyway. I had a mushroom. I used to down the socks for the soldiers, I was not very good at it because I was only 2 when she started me, but they don't know anything like this. And if we lost imports from the Middle East and China and so on, and throw away stuff, and we had to cobble our shoes and have them refixed and passed downs and so on and so forth, the life would be really changed. And I think in a way these children today need to know that this isn't a throwaway world, because they're looking at the garbage in the oceans. They're looking at the water that's disappeared because they've wasted it. Our groundwater, as my son Warren was talking about in the show, and because they're trying to get the gas out of the ground, they have created an abhorrent amount of mess, and it's got to stop. It's got to stop, and it's going to stop with these kids if we teach them right. If we teach them to be conscious of themselves, their energy, the space they take up, how their aura affects another person sitting next to them, like i.e. if you go to the movies, why do you always look for a space so you won't be sitting next to a stranger? Because you don't want their aura in your aura, right? Because you don't want to go home with negativity, especially if the movie's negative.
Is that a lot of where there's a lot of people that are brought up now that don't see vulnerability as a strength at all.
I know. And you know what else with depression that's coming out now is the suicidal, very, very strong suicidal energy. I've got a lot of people calling me. I feel like I want to, they're not doing it, but they feel it's like mentally or emotionally, I feel like I just want to end my life. What's the point of living? To some acutely depressed and to say they want to take pills and so on. But this is also something I have to be aware of. The planets are in a negative connotation around us in our atmosphere. And so in the overview, it's a good thing because it's making us realize we are a negative race of humans. And until we realize that unity and harmony and peace and tranquility are the keys to our survival in the future, we're going to keep destroying things. I mean, already Afghanistan is talking about they're going to blow the place up, and you think they'd learn, wouldn't you? After what is it, 20 years of suffering?
Yeah, but that's the thing is that what is there to gain from it? There's nothing.
Nothing. They're just going to flatten their land.
No, it's just because it's like when the Vikings invaded for farmland. It hasn't changed in over 1,000 years. Change. People are still in competition. People are still wanting. I got a pig and you got a mouse. I'm better than you because I can do something with a pig and you can't do anything with a mouse. But the concept, the competition is always going to be there. The what's the word I'm thinking of?
Well, let me interject while you're thinking about that. I've got red cloud in my head again. In my book, I've included his saying years ago, where he said through me at the time in public, and then I wrote it out afterwards, that America was the first to go to the moon and should be proud of that and should be the first to rebuild the nation internally without influence from the rest of the world. And that in the same vein, every country should turn their energy in to rebuilding their own country and become independently strong and powerful. And we've got the president now talking about doing the infrastructure, and that is the beginning. We need that. We have to rebuild this nation, and we have to build it as we are all equal humans. It doesn't matter where we came from originally. This is the new world, as was prophesied. And we need to congregate together in one union place. And then last thing I want to say is that Spirit also said to me of the Jewish and the Muslim wall, there should be one building. They can keep the wall if they want to, but there's one building. Muslims praying here, Jews praying here, power of prayer to unify that whole area. But nobody's going to listen to me because they're too busy rationalizing that their religion is better than the other. But the bottom line is those two religions are founded on the original Old Testament Bibles. And Muhammad wrote what he wrote for the peoples to think, not to say an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, but to think, what do these words mean from all the religions of the world?
Well, that's exactly why I said critical thinking. People don't read books. They want to see, visually what can be done or something like that. They want to see another person do it so that they can do it themselves. Basic education comes from reading a damn book. And I wish there were so many people out there that actually were able to open their minds rather than be influenced by some mediocre or something that is just, I don't know what's the word I'm thinking of it. I'm gone blank.
Yeah, the bottom line, mediocre training and education is basically today, like if I put, talking about the websites, if I put a paragraph, I get told, well, that's too much because I'll only read 2 lines.
Yeah.
Laziness.
Yeah.
Laziness.
Told, okay, well, my shows are too long, blah blah blah. Yeah, of course. If I talk to you for an hour, if I talk to you for an hour or 2 or whatever, I think it's what is it, about an hour or 2, you're gonna, and it's heavy information, you're gonna want to fall asleep. You're not gonna want to be able to, because your brain can't process it unless you have the critical thinking skills, which is not really readily taught anymore. It's just because we are lazy and we don't want to pick up a book or learn anything basic in order to enhance whatever our critical thinking skills are to whatever we're going to learn, then we're never going to get anywhere.
Well, there's 2 things I want to say in response to that. Is one, there are audio books now, and people they're so busy, like driving or doing something, that they're cleaning the house, so they can't spend time reading a book, but they can listen. And that was one of the things I seriously thought about, putting my books into audio, recording them myself, because I think even if I was to make a hiccup and not fall over my word, it's better to remind them then that they are listening to a human being reading it and not some actor, that kind of thing. But also, it's not only that, there is the saying that we've had since the dawn of time, an image is 1,000 words. But where do you go with your 1,000 words? Everybody is very individual. So if I said a lamppost, okay, you will visualize a lamppost, but you are visualizing the lamppost I'm visualizing? Probably not. You're probably thinking of one that you saw with a big arm or something in your generation. I'm thinking of a gas lamp. You know what I mean? So how do we come together in terms of the connotations of the image? It has to be spoken. It has to be described. It has to stimulate our imagination. And that's what stories do. And I'm going back to the minstrels in the old days when they go from town to town. We need that. And there was, back in the 90s, there were storytellers. I was at one expo somewhere, and there was one lady who was doing stories, and I couldn't stay because I was doing my thing, but I popped in enough to hear her, and it was fun. And she was making it up as she was going along. And that's what kids like. That's what I used to do with my kids at night in bed, having a story, mummy's making up a story.
Imagination as well. We don't have, there's a lot of people who are just so lazy they don't have enough imagination. Oh, well, you draw so well, you write so well, you dance so well, how do you do that? It's like, can you imagine something? Can you use that skill in that little noggin of yours to come up with something that makes you unique?
And they look at you like, well, I'll give you an example, and it's not critiquing anyone particular, but I had those painted rocks, and I said to the mom, okay, I want you to tell your child a story, the child was there, about the rock. And she goes, well, I can't remember what was on it, so I'm just making this up. Well, there's a rock, and on the rock is a flower, and the flower is red and green. It looks pretty. And was the end of her story. So then I said to her child, okay, you got the same rock. She says, oh, well, this rock was on the ground, And this little flower could talk. And every time someone went by, it'd say, hello, I'm down here. Can you hear me? It wasn't what she said, but that was the kind of thing. And she went on to tell this whole story about how important it was that everybody knew that this rock was there. Yeah, that's the difference. And the mother was like, wow, she's really good at telling stories. And I said, well, so are you, if you just get out of your head and get into your heart. What does this say to you, feel to you, pull you to say? I think we've lost that. We've lost that urge to explore the unknown inside ourselves. How are we doing for time? Because I'm having a good time talking, but we're probably well over, are we?
We're about 8 minutes over, but that's okay.
Oh, it's not so bad then. Okay, good. So in terms of anything, a jigsaw puzzle, you know, you can go to these Hobby Lobby kind of places in this country and you can buy kits that you can put together. Kids, boys can do the make a plane or a car or something. Even the Lego kits and things. These are important for the kids to fiddle and feel and make things and build things and use their imagination. And I'll tell you, when my kids were young with the Lego, the things that they built were amazing. Now, they go out and they buy a kit and you're only supposed to build this train. You know, and I was actually in England years ago now, when before my father died or something around that time. So it would be about 2015. And one of the kids, my grandkids, had this kit. And I said to him, okay, what else can you make? Because he'd made the thing. And he said, what? I said, well, let's make something else. No. And he actually got angry with me because I was trying to make something out of his kit. Yes, that was not part of the kit.
I was brought up making Play-Doh. You remember the Play-Doh, not the stuff you buy from the store, the actually making Play-Doh.
Yeah.
I was taught how to knit. I was taught how to sew. I was taught how to do a lot of things actually. But and this same stuff, these same skills that is I teach my kids now. I mean, even though I've got boys, I still teach them. They know how that they've got full independence. They know how to go into I mean, they're five. I've got a 5 and a 7-year-old, and they know how to make their own sandwiches if they're hungry. They don't have to come to me. They've got full independence because I trust them enough. I taught them, and then I trusted them enough to go out on their own to actually make a simple sandwich or make some Roman noodles or do all of that. And see, that level of trust is non-existent because a parent is busy. They can't supervise, they can't do this, they can't do that. They don't have time to teach. They don't have, they may not even have the skills themselves, but, or they just don't, there are a lot of parents out there that just don't care.
Well, let me come back. I'm going to interject here because we're going, remember, with psychology, that when you've got two parents who are both focused on the kids, but they have different points of view, using my hands here, we've got friction, okay? When you've got one parent who's on their own, they've got much better control over the influence they have on that child. But as you said, if they're overwhelmed, then they're already depressed with the double responsibility. So either way, we've got two parents who are not getting along well. So the kids are getting that and they're getting depressed with both parents. Or they've got one parent who's struggling like hell and they're telling them what to do. Even if they're creative, they can feel the aura and they can, so they're still getting depression. And, you know, if the kids are born with psychic ability and nobody knows about it, then they're empathetic, sympathetic to everything, and they're depressed because nobody understands them. So you've got a whole bunch of family members wandering around who are completely depressed and they don't even know that they are. And this is in the early years of that marriage. Now, let's say they divorce and the kids now have remarried parents and extended family, and it gets bigger and bigger, as indeed my children went through. And, you know, there's that one parent that's constantly trying to be the center, which was me. And no matter what the influences were of the outside forces of extended families and new relatives, there was always something in the way. Like my mother-in-law with Steve, dear heart, still with us today, over 100. But, oh, Steve, why are you wearing that t-shirt? Because I love it, Mum. Well, you should take that off. It doesn't look good on you. And my kids are watching that, and they're going, but I like my t-shirt. Well, you're too young yet. You wear what Mummy tells you. And I'm sitting there going, oh shit, she's doing what I've just said. That you can dress yourself, you can wear whatever you want, you know. And so there's these outside influences. So, and we had teachers, you know, and all the people we mentioned earlier, outside forces. How can we expect freedom of choice when there's so many people saying my choice, my way is the way? How can they process all of this? I think we have to learn as a culture that we never say, this is the way. We say, this is the way I've chose to do it. You might choose something else. Give them the word choice. Yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah, and we're oversaturated with choice. And that's why we're so convoluted in the way that we think, because we're just all over the place.
So we still lose the battle, don't we? Okay. See what I'm saying? But at least with choice, they have the will then within, the free will, freedom of spirit, freedom of speech, whatever it is, to say, I don't want to do that. Okay, or I'll do it later, or something in some way. And right now, when I look at our country and everyone's judging everyone, history, I don't take sides political, and I never will. And then, you know, we talk about the infrastructure for that, but hey, who's going to lead the way? This person's not right. They say this, and that person's might be better, but they might say this. Until we can sit around a table and really look in the eyes and really listen with the ears and not interrupt. And I have to watch myself, because I know I interrupt, because I've got something going on, and I have to say, excuse me, I need to interrupt. But to just blatantly assume, which is what people are doing right now, and telling people hearsay and making it facts is not good for these children.
No, assuming about things is a very big killer. Really is. It's yeah. Because you're not hearing it from the horse's mouth. You're relying on external factors in order to base your assumption on things. And then on top of that, which leads to judgment and a completely way off perspective on things, and not totally coherent with reality that is presented.
So when we're in a catch-22, what do? You have to pull back. You have to find yourself. You have to say, who am I today? And what does me today want to do? And oblivious of judgment, condemnations, or whatever it is, I'm going to do it. Well, unfortunately, the only way I see that at the moment, in terms of bulk seeing it, is in the negativity. I'm going to sit here and take pills, and I'm not going to go and see somebody who could help me. I'm going to sit here and write articles all over the place about the hearsay that I've heard, and embellish it to more hearsay and so on, until we have some way of defining what is real. Imagination's leading the way, and that, you know, we are imaginative people, and we can't stop being imaginative. We can't stop being creative. That's who we are. But we do have the ability to talk, listen, hug, do together, build something. And yes, there are groups here and there. I see it on the news occasionally where they're actually going out and helping people, and that's wonderful. But it's a small group. We need to get them bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. But then what happens when they get bigger? Somebody stands up and says, I'm the boss. You will have to do it this way. And then we lose the creativity. So it is a dynamic, and it is a big question mark. And I just want to leap forward from all of this, because this is all the foundation that we're talking about. All those people who have been listening to this, if you are depressed, if you are on pills for your depression, if you're going to a doctor week in, week out, just to get another prescription, you are your own enemy, not the doctor. You're making it possible for that doctor to believe in that script. And he will keep writing that, or she will keep writing that for someone else and someone else and someone else and someone else, until you stand your own ground and you say, I put myself in my own depression, therefore I can take myself out of my depression by undoing it and giving myself a belief in my skill, however small, however tiny, it's a start, and work with it and reach out to people who are waiting for you to say, I've got my little seed. It's a good one. And they will help you plant it into the soil and grow yourself back to the person you want to be. And believe you me, metaphysical people all over the world are waiting for you.
Mhm.
They're waiting for you to come and say, I'm ready. They can't help you otherwise. And if you stay with the regular medicine and more pills, you're going to get sick. All the people who died from COVID were people who were already sick on pills. Think about that.
Mhm.
My husband included. Okay, I had everything natural to do for him when he had his heart issue. And he looked at me and he said, I'm sorry, I know what you do. I've seen you, I've witnessed it all the way down the line, but I'm still going to take the medicine. And I fought that for 15 years until I couldn't do it anymore. So that is what we have to look at. Medicine has gone awry. It's political. It's, people in some, look at what they did with the virus, and all the medicines and injections and whatever. All these people working like gung-ho and researching and whatever, and then throwing it out at us. And we're going, oh, yes, need it. I didn't.
Yeah.
But now they're finding out, just like I said right in the beginning, it's mutating, and what they've given to the people has got side effects.
Mhm.
So we're not mentioning anything particular here, and we're not making any choices to what's right or wrong, but individual people think for themselves, and their bodies will tell them yay or nay, and the world has to understand that choice, whatever it is. And if it means half of us disappear into the earth, then that's what the oneness wants.
Exactly.
We'll learn by losing them.
And it's only going to make your psyche worse when it gets to that point. If you do become affected by it, going down that route of the conspiracy theory agenda, then you're never going to get anywhere in life. You're just a part of the negative group that is going to continue on with history repeating itself over,
and you'll create more and more depressed people.
And you're going to create more chaos, more negativity, more fear. And I see people, those, it doesn't matter whether it's real or not. What you're doing is propaganda, enhancing the propaganda by facing it to people who are already depressed. Now, I could say, turn around here and say that life is completely morbid. It really is. On how you look at it is completely up to you, but there is no such thing as ruining your life because of somebody else or some environmental factor, or whatever your trauma may be in your upbringing, or your life experience. Life is like bamboo. Life is pretty resilient. It's pretty flexible. And so no one is going to come and save you but you.
On that note, I think that's a good note for people to remember, probably to end, because we've been talking a long time. And I know we could go on and on and on about it. But I do want to say the book about the virus is going to be up. When do you think you'll be able to put it, that they can go there and download it for free?
Soon.
Yeah. So watch out for it. We're not mentioning names, because if we mention names, they take things down. So if you're curious, go to easypeasysolutions.org, or is that the one, or do you want to go elsewhere?
Easypeasysolutions.org is fine.
Yeah. So she'll be ready with that when she's ready with that. My last book.
Yes, and for those who are looking for everything that we do, you can go to the samaraseducationcenter.com. You can go to easypeasysolutions.org, theuniversalchristchurch.com, askdrmargaret.com. You could also go to my websites, which is somafusionmedia.com, askdrkatie.com, Soma-fusion.com, somafusionacademy.com. There's a whole heap of websites. You just have to go on social media and go find me. We are on all platforms, by the way. And I would love to invite people to come and join us tomorrow for a free 90-minute talk at 2 p.m. Pacific time, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll be talking all about, what are we talking about, Margaret?
I'm talking about your psychic ability, how it manifests in you as an infant, and how to use it in your everyday life. And so we'll be looking at the 5 senses, and you'll know quite a bit by the time we get done in that hour, and you'll be on your way to trusting yourself and your choices.
Absolutely. So be there, be square. I'm going to put up the link again for the Zoom meeting that we have scheduled for tomorrow so that you can come and join us. Again, it's 2 p.m. Pacific time, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Please don't come 5 minutes early. You're not going to get let in. But we will start letting people into the meeting itself. Outside of that, what was I was going to mention something else. I'm going blank today, I swear. But what I'm saying, what I will say is that next week we'll have our show at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, or 4
Arizona time, where I am Pacific time.
Don't know what the topic is going to be, but like I said, you need to really follow. If you are listening to the stream right now, you really need to follow us up on social media. There's always something that we have that we promote. Margaret has her show, Dr. Margaret Speaks, at soundcloud.com. She has all of her shows up there. So go check them out. Of course, I've got my archives up there. For those who do listen to my show, I will say that I will be taking a little hiatus. It is an extended one. I've been through hell for the last 6 months, so please be patient with me. I will get my stuff back up and running. Although I've been overwhelmed with a hell of a lot of work. That's an understatement, but I'm still around. If you are seeking for help or looking for help from me, please reach out to me. Also, all you got to do is reach out to me. I will drop everything to talk. So it's just a matter of asking me what I'm doing and reaching out. So there you go.
Yeah. If anybody wants sessions with us, we can do that as well, because people would need help, guidance, counseling and stuff like that. We can do that online or on the telephone. So you can find us. Okay.
All right. Be there, be square. We'll see you tomorrow if you're going to come and join us at the talk. Again, I'm going to put that, repost the information regarding that up on social media, so please look out for it. If you are wanting to make an inquiry, please email us at samarastucc@gmail.com. It is up on many of the promos that we have. Outside of that, much love to you all. We will see you next week.
Thank you for listening. We've enjoyed it. Bye.